Hello, my dear listeners. It's Chris. Welcome back to another evening of stories drawn from the hidden corners of history and culture. Tonight, we're stepping away from the familiar and into something quite different. A meditation on resilience, adaptation, and the quiet wisdom embedded in the everyday practices of Russian life. We're exploring a deceptively simple question. How did old Russians sleep in harsh winters? But this isn't really about sleep, is it? Not entirely. It's about survival. It's about ingenuity born from necessity. It's about a people who developed profound understanding of their environment through generations of living in conditions that would seem unbearable to most of us today. I find myself drawn to these kinds of stories because they reveal something essential about human nature. We live in an age of climate control, of technological solutions to discomfort, but there's something humbling and oddly comforting about learning how our ancestors not only endured, but thrived in environments that tested every limit of human adaptation. The Russians, particularly those in the northern and Siberian regions, developed an intimate relationship with winter. They didn't simply survive it, they understood it, respected it, and built their daily rhythms around its demands. What makes this exploration compelling is that these practices were built on careful observation and passed down through oral tradition, family wisdom, and communal knowledge. Before central heating, before modern textiles, before any of our contemporary conveniences, people developed heating methods, sleeping arrangements, and practices that were remarkably sophisticated. There's a quiet intelligence in these traditions, a kind of folk engineering that we've largely forgotten. The Russian winter is no small thing. In many regions, temperatures drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. Snow can bury entire villages. The nights stretch impossibly long. And yet, life continued. People slept. They rested. They maintained the physical and mental strength required to survive until spring. How they managed this is a window into both practical wisdom and cultural values. As you settle in tonight, I want to invite you to imagine yourself in a Russian izba, a traditional log cabin sometime in the 18th or 19th century. Picture the world outside, snow falling in that peculiar way it does in the deepest cold, the air so frigid it seems to crystallize around you. Inside, there's warmth, but not the ambient, invisible warmth we're accustomed to. This warmth is present, something you can feel, something you must actively maintain and understand. The walls are thick wood, insulating and alive. The air carries the scent of pine, smoke, and the peculiar smell of a space where many generations have lived their lives. This is the world we're entering, not as outsiders, but as observers, learning the quiet wisdom of survival and rest. Let us begin. The Russian winter presented a challenge that demanded not just physical survival, but a complete reorganization of daily life. The solution that emerged over centuries was as practical as it is ingenious, a system of heating, sleeping arrangements, and communal practices that transformed the brutal season into something manageable and, in many ways, culturally generative. The sleeping platform and the stove. The heart of Russian winter sleeping was the relationship between two elements: the pech, the massive tile or brick stove, and the podlopolnik, a sleeping platform built directly above or adjacent to this heat source. These stoves were not mere appendages to the home, they were the central organizing principle of domestic life. The Russian stove was a marvel of thermal engineering, though those who built them would never have used such language. Constructed from clay brick, Fired at high temperatures, these structures could be 7 or 8 feet tall and several feet deep. Once heated, usually through the burning of birchwood, which provided superior heat and left valuable ash, the stove retained warmth for remarkable periods. The design allowed heat to circulate through internal chambers before rising and eventually escaping through a chimney, meaning that nearly all of the fire's energy served the purpose of warming the home rather than being wasted. The sleeping platform built above or beside this stove was no luxury. It was necessity elevated to an art form. A family might climb up onto this platform in the evening when the stove was still radiating substantial warmth from the day's fire. The platform itself was constructed from wood, and people would arrange themselves on it in layers, children nestled against parents, multiple generations sharing the space, their combined body heat and the rising warmth from below creating a microclimate that could sustain sleep through the long night, even as the external temperature plummeted. Textiles and layering. But the platform was only part of the solution. Russians had developed sophisticated textile practices born from necessity. The average Russian home in the countryside would contain multiple layers of blankets, quilts, and coverings, items that were carefully maintained, seasonally adjusted, and understood with the precision we might reserve for technical equipment. The puchlia odiala, a puffy quilt filled with down or other insulating materials, was essential. Unlike the thin blankets of southern climates, these quilts were engineered for weight and insulation. A family might own several, layering them across the sleeping platform to create what was essentially a cocoon, a sealed space that captured and retained body heat with remarkable efficiency. Bedding was changed seasonally. Summer bedding was lighter, breathable. Winter bedding was heavy, dense, designed to trap every degree of warmth. The process of preparing bedding for winter was a significant household task, often undertaken in autumn, when the straw or other filling materials had to be inspected, cleaned, and sometimes replaced entirely. Perhaps most significantly, Russians approached winter sleeping as a communal rather than individual practice. The nuclear family sleeping arrangement, parents in one room, children in another, is largely a modern invention. In Russian homes during the harsh season, families slept together, sometimes with extended family members, servants, or hired hands, sharing the same platform. This wasn't simply a matter of available space, though space was limited. It was a deliberate practice rooted in thermal efficiency and social cohesion. Multiple bodies generated warmth collectively. A sleeping arrangement of 6 to 8 people on a single platform created a stable thermal environment that a single sleeper could not achieve. The very young and the very old, those most vulnerable to cold, were carefully positioned in the center of the arrangement, surrounded by the warmth of stronger bodies. There was also a psychological dimension. The long Russian winter was not only a physical challenge, but a psychological one. The darkness, the isolation, the relentless cold, these could break the human spirit. Sleeping in a warm, crowded arrangement, surrounded by familiar family and familiar breathing, provided something beyond thermal comfort. It provided security, continuity, and a sense of being held by the community through the season's trial, preparation, and rhythm. The winter sleep was not something that happened haphazardly. Russian households operated according to seasonal rhythms that had been refined over generations. As autumn turned toward winter, families made careful preparations. The stove would be thoroughly inspected and cleaned. Any cracks in the clay or gaps in the mortar would be sealed. A small breach could mean the loss of crucial heat, or worse, carbon monoxide entering the living space. The chimney would be cleared of accumulated creosote and debris. In some cases, a secondary stove or heating device would be prepared as a backup. Firewood was stacked in careful piles, sheltered from the wet snow. The wood had to be of the right type. Birch was preferred for its heat value, pine for its ready availability, and it had to be seasoned properly. Green wood would not burn hot, it would produce smoke and insufficient warmth. The calculation of how much wood would be needed to see the family through until spring was serious business. Running out of fuel in February was not merely uncomfortable, it could be fatal. Sleep itself. The actual sleeping that occurred was different from what modern people experience. The Russian winter sleep was not necessarily continuous. Many families operated on a split sleep schedule, sleeping for several hours, waking for a period, then sleeping again. This pattern was common in European culture before industrialization, though it was perhaps more pronounced in the Russian winter context. During the waking hours, people might tend the fire, eat a meal, perform household tasks, or simply talk. The time was not dead or wasted, but integrated into the rhythm of life. In fact, many Russian folk stories, songs, and communal activities happened during these night hours. The long darkness became a canvas for cultural production and community bonding. The sleep that did occur was often deep and restorative despite the unusual schedule. The body, given permission to rest when the opportunity arose, took full advantage. Sleeping in a warm platform surrounded by familiar bodies, exhausted from the day's labor, people likely slept with the profound unconsciousness of those whose survival depends on taking rest when it is available. Clothing and personal practice. People did not remove all their clothing to sleep. Instead, they removed outer layers, the heavy felt coats, the fur-lined garments designed for outdoor work, but they slept in undergarments and lighter layers. In some cases, people slept in their day clothes entirely, ready to wake and face the cold without the time-consuming process of dressing. Nightcaps were common, especially for women and children. These weren't mere fashion, they prevented heat loss through the head and protected against the drafts that inevitably found their way through even the best-sealed log cabins. Socks were worn, often wool, and feet were sometimes wrapped in additional cloth. Before sleep, people might consume a warm beverage, a type of kisel, a thick drink made from fermented grains, or a weak tea if resources permitted. This served both to warm the stomach and to ease the body into sleep. The warmth was temporary but was valuable in those critical moments before sleep overcame consciousness.
What strikes us about the modern observer is not merely the practical ingenuity of these arrangements, but the way they suggest a different relationship with discomfort, cold, and seasonal rhythm. Modern life has largely eliminated our experience of winter's relentlessness. We heat our homes to a constant temperature, we light them artificially. We move directly from heated cars to heated buildings. Russians of earlier centuries accepted winter as a fundamental condition of existence. They did not fight it, but rather adapted to it, developed technologies and practices that worked with the winter rather than against it. Sleep, in this context, was not an escape from life, but a central part of the winter rhythm, a necessary, honored part of survival. The sleep that occurred in these conditions was likely deeper, more restorative, and more bound to seasonal change than the relatively standardized sleep of modern life. The body understood seasons. It understood the rhythm of light and dark, warmth and cold, activity and rest. Sleep came when it was appropriate to sleep, not at the time a schedule dictated. Cultural significance. These practices were not merely survival mechanisms, they were embedded in Russian culture and spirituality. The idea of the stove as the heart of the home appears again and again in Russian literature and folklore. The stove is where the domovoi, the house spirit, dwells. It is where food is prepared, where warmth originates, where the family gathers. The sleeping arrangement, with its emphasis on family unity and protection of the vulnerable, reflects deeper values about human interdependence and communal responsibility. The Russian language itself contains a proverb, "Moroz danos danosit," which means the frost will reach your nose, an acknowledgement that winter is relentless but must be faced. In stories, literature, and folk traditions, we see evidence that these winter sleeping practices were not experienced as deprivation, but a necessary, almost sacred part of the annual cycle. The preparation for winter was a kind of ritual. The sleeping together was bonding. The emergence in spring was renewal. The transition to modernity. As Russia industrialized and modernized, these practices gradually changed. Central heating systems, electric lights, and modern bedding transformed how people experienced winter. Sleeping arrangements became more individualized. The communal sleeping platform gave way to separate beds in separate rooms. Yet, even as technology changed the practical necessities, the cultural memory persisted. Russian literature, from Tolstoy to Dostoevsky to the folk tales that have survived into modern times, repeatedly references the stove, the sleeping arrangement, the winter. These images carry weight not because people still live this way, but because these practices shaped Russian culture so fundamentally that their echoes remain. What we discover in studying how old Russians slept is not simply practical information about surviving cold. We discover something about human adaptation, cultural values, and the relationship between individuals and their environment. We learn that survival, when it becomes ingrained in a culture, transforms into tradition, ritual, and meaning. The old Russian sleeping practices remind us that before we had technology to eliminate discomfort, we had ingenuity, community, and cultural practice. We had the ability to transform necessity into something that bound us together, that created meaning, that connected us to the rhythms of nature and to each other. In a modern world of isolated sleep in isolated rooms, with artificial light and constant temperature, there is something worth remembering in the image of a Russian family gathered on a warm platform above a glowing stove, the winter held at bay outside, the warmth and human presence held tight within. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the wisdom of the past. These practices may seem distant from our modern lives, yet they carry lessons about resilience. Good night and sleep well.